Welcome back to Local Lore Archives, where we dive into forgotten tales from the past. Today, I'm standing here in Rouge National Urban Park on the banks of the Rouge River, on the border of Scarborough and Pickering, a spot that's now a peaceful haven for hikers and nature lovers. But over 130 years ago, in the summer of 1891, this river held a dark secret. The body of a man, August Werner, floating lifelessly in these waters. Was it suicide, as one paper claimed? Or murder by person unknown, as the official inquest decided? And why did a woman named Miss Hartle insist it was her missing husband, no matter what the evidence said? Join me as we explore this unsolved mystery, trying to piece together newspaper reports. So, let's step back in time. Our story begins on July 31st, 1891, when fishermen pulled the decomposing body from the Rouge River. The man had been in the water for days. The paper estimates between 4 to 6 days. His face had been exposed to the sun and was considerably bloated and blackened, with blood oozing from the mouth and a bullet wound in the right temple. It must have been a grim sight in the morning heat. Back then, this area was much different. William Cowan owned lots of land here, fronting both sides of the Rouge River. Much of it was fertile farmland with groves and orchard that he transformed into the early Rosebank campground starting in the 1880s. By 1891, there were numerous tents where residents of Toronto are spending their holidays, and a couple of these campers were near the mouth of the river when they saw something floating in the water. They pointed the object out to a young boy named William Taylor, who was camping here with his family, and he was out paddling in the water. He made the discovery that the object was in fact a corpse of a man. Mr. Cowan was informed of what had been found, so Cowan secured the body to a stake. He then informed Dr. R.M. Bateman and Crown Attorney J.E. Farewell. Cowan, with the help of Constable Dennis O'Connor, took the body from the water and laid it out in his boathouse.
He was about 35 to 40 years old, 5'5" tall and 140 pounds. Was clean shaven with the exception of a heavy sandy mustache, with his hair being the same color. He was dressed in a slate colored coat, white shirt with small bone buttons at the neck and wrist. The paper says that the shirt had been recently purchased. He also had a 16.5-inch pilot collar with turned down corners that was of a fine quality, with a black necktie with red stripes. On his feet were a pair of fine black stockings and coarse rough boots, with a stamp on the inside of his vest. A. Simmons, 137 to 141 York Street. On Monday, 4 days earlier, a brown Christie stiff hat was found near where the body was discovered. The hat is said to be the size of 7 1/4 and of good quality, but was too large for the wearer, so it was stuffed with paper for a better fit. It was given to a man named Robert Black, who was one of the hands working for Mr. Cowan, and nothing more was thought of it until now. They searched his pockets, but it revealed little about his identity. In his first pocket, they found a leather pocketbook that only had a tin tobacco stamp, a small black pipe, and a white handkerchief, along with an appliance for removing cartridges from a revolver. In another pocket were 6 cartridges of .32 caliber. In his left pants pocket was a slip of paper with 3 addresses on them: Charles Cluth of King Street West, T. Heinzman of King Street, and M. L. Shane. So a jury was summoned and an inquest was held at the blacksmith shop of Mr. Cowan, with the body being placed in his boathouse. The paper says that the body has been viewed by a large number of residents. Some are just curious, and others are trying to figure out the identity of the body. News spread far and wide of this mysterious body found in the Rouge River. News reaches Mrs. Hartle all the way in London, Ontario, and sent a telegram to the Chief of Police. If body found in Rouge River Thursday has not been claimed, please send photograph to 284 South Street. The police had to get to work and track down leads. So let's see what they find during their investigation. During the investigation, the police found out that on July 25th, 3 unknown men were in the neighborhood. These men are thought to have been on a fishing expedition and said to have been respectably dressed. A man named James Black said he saw the men and had a conversation with the deceased, who asked for a horse to get them to a hotel. Black said the man was drunk and told them he didn't have a horse for them and sent them away. When James viewed the body in the boathouse, he told detectives that he was positive the dead man was the one who asked about hiring a horse. The men then entered Mr. McCowan's stable, where James Mark and Chance Long also talked to the man and said he was offering $5 for a horse to drive them to the nearest hotel. When Chance Long viewed the body, he thought he recognized the deceased, but couldn't say for sure if it was the same one he spoke to about the horse. Detectives also learned that 2 second-class tickets for Toronto were purchased at the Port Union station for the late train by a stranger unknown to the night operator. Detectives tracked down those addresses that were found on the dead man. Mr. A. Simmons was a second-hand dealer, and he was able to identify a piece of clothing sold to the dead man about a month ago. He didn't know the man's name, but he knew he was employed on the Beltline, and Simmons also knew that the man boarded somewhere near York Street, as he had seen him pass his store frequently. Simmons was asked to come see the body. When he arrived at the boathouse, the paper says that the features were practically beyond recognition, but Simmons was able to identify the clothes as the same that had been sold by him to the man resembling the deceased. The body was too far gone for recognition, but the general contour of the remains led Simmons to conclude that his customer and the victim were identical. Unfortunately, the other names didn't help. Mr. T. Heinzman didn't want to go see the body and thought the dead man was an out-of-work piano tuner. Mr. Cluth didn't know how his name came into the dead man's possession, and M.L. Shane didn't appear in the Toronto directory. Constable O'Connor surveyed this bridge, where the body was found floating underneath. He discovered stains of blood on the wood under the rail at the south side. On closely inspecting the wood, he was able to find that some fiber of woolen clothing had been rubbed into the grain of wood. This is taken as strong evidence that the body had been thrown over the bridge into the river. They reasoned that if he killed himself while leaning over the bridge, there wouldn't have been any blood found on the wood, while the railing would have prevented a fall into the water. He also wired Miss Hartle that the body was beyond identification, but a photograph would be sent. The post-mortem is now about to take place when Dr. Bateman and Dr. Dales entered the boathouse. In the boathouse, the body has been exposed to the air for 48 hours, and that exposure had hastened the decomposition of the body. This is what the 2 doctors report in the paper. The bullet had entered the right side of the head and took a course inward and forward, striking and shattering the sphenoid bone above and behind the right eye. It must have been fired from close quarters to have shattered such a strong part of the skull. It did not go through, but returned and was found crushed out of all shape in the right lobe of the brain. There was no water in the lungs, making it clear that life was extinct when the body hit the water. It was long after midnight when the post-mortem was complete. The inquest was adjourned for the night. Constable O'Connor has taken charge of the corpse and will be interred the next day at the expense of the township of Pickering. It is now impossible to preserve the body for identification owing to the advanced stage of decomposition. The paper ends the day by saying effort will now be made to find the 2 companions of the deceased. When the inquest was brought back, they would learn the name of the deceased and come to a conclusion to this case. Though, as we'll find out, not everyone involved agreed with the verdict. The man looking to hire a horse, the one that James Black was so sure that him and the dead man were the same person, and Chance Long thought he recognized the deceased. Turns out they are two different people altogether. The man who approached Black and Long is named James Houston, and his two friends are employed in a factory nearby. So the mystery of an unknown group of people searching for a ride and one of them ending up dead while the other two hiding out somewhere was all just a case of mistaken identity. But acting on clues given by Mr. Simmons that the dead man was lodged somewhere on York Street, detectives were able to trace him to a cheap lodging house run by Edward Nuttall on the corner of York and Pearl Streets. He registered there under the name August Werner, and Werner told Nuttall that he was going to work on the Beltline and was going to buy some new clothes. Nuttall was able to positively identify this clothing shown to him as the same that August Werner bought. Before leaving Nuttall's lodge, Werner pointed east and said he was going that way. 10 days later, his body was found floating in the Rouge River. Constable O'Connor has now buried August Werner in a pauper's grave somewhere in a field near Rosebank campground. The paper doesn't give any more information than that. The field the paper refers to was most likely on William Cowan's land, as Rosebank Camp was developed on his property. O'Connor likely had to obtain permission from Mr. Cowan. Due to the body's advanced decomposition after several days in the Rouge River and 48 hours of exposure in a boathouse, the body had to be buried quickly. From my research, this was not standard procedure for urban paupers, who were typically interred in designated potter's fields such as in a church's burial ground, but flexibility allowed it for sanitary reasons in remote cases. No religious service or marker was noted, and the site was chosen for immediacy near the discovery location. Much of Cowan's original land is now protected as part of the Rouge National Urban Park. However, you can see how much this area has been built up over the years, with custom homes on large lots, potentially paving over his unmarked site. If the field was in conserved zones, such as near the river or lakefront, the grave could remain undisturbed, though if it's more inland, it might lie under modern infrastructure. In an interview, Miss Hartle is described as young, pleasant-looking, and has a family of little ones that she supports with honest work. Miss Hartle wouldn't give up, despite a name now being put to the body and also buried. She still believes it is her husband, John Hartle, and not August Werner. She said her husband had been gone a year, and she last heard he was living in Ingersoll. She said the description in the paper fit him exactly. When asked about the man being identified as August Werner, she said her husband was also German, 35 years old, and 140 pounds. She told the police that she received the photo and is convinced it's her husband. She also told them her husband had a mole, and they apparently asked to clarify if it was a mole or a scar. Miss Hartle told the reporter that she plans on responding back this afternoon. She even produced her marriage certificate because there were doubts she was married to him at all. Detective John Newhall described to the inquest how he searched the bed of the river near the bridge with a heavy magnet in the hopes of finding the revolver. The theory being that if Werner did in fact shoot himself on the bridge, the gun would have fallen right there. But all attempts to recover the gun failed. Newhall also tells how he made exhaustive inquiries along the Belt Railway, asking about August Werner since he was supposed to be working there, but he couldn't find anyone who claimed to have known him. Detectives also tracked down John's brother, Wesley Hartle. He was brought to the inquest to disprove of the idea that August Werner's true identity was John Hartle. Wesley says the last time he's heard from his brother, John was in Valparaiso, Indiana. John had been away from home for 12 years, and the last news about his whereabouts was received about 5 years ago. Wesley never heard about his brother's alleged marriage until Miss Hartle had her story told in the papers and said that she hasn't seen her husband in over a year. From Miss Hartle's description and brief biography, Wesley Hartle is certain that her missing husband is his brother John, but is not the Rouge River victim. This concluded the evidence. The Crown addressed the coroner, suggesting that there was no probability of gaining new information, and there was no point in prolonging the inquiry. The Crown thought that an open verdict would leave room to act should anything fresh come to light. It took the jury 45 minutes to come back with the following verdict: that the deceased is one August Werner, late of the city of Toronto, and came to his death on or about the 24th of July, 1891 at the township of Pickering, from a wound made by a bullet fired from a pistol held in the hand of some person to the jurors unknown.
With that open verdict, it still left many questions, and not everyone was buying into the murder theory. One of the newspapers had a different idea of what happened and had quite the write-up of what they felt like was Werner's last days.
Werner met death at his own hands. He had not enjoyed the roses and lilies of life to any appreciable extent, and as he wandered through the fields among the blossoms kissed by the sun and cradled by the winds, his despondency at being unable to attain work would naturally be deepened. Resolved to end it all, Werner walked out on the bridge and seated himself on the timbers, pistol in hand. He was quite alone. No eye of man was on him. No sound or trace of man was to be heard. The tents of the campers on Rosebank could be seen glimmering white through the trees. The waves broke on the pebbly beach, but there was no other sign of life. No sail flecked the lake. No pinion of smoke from the distant Port Union marred the clear tract. He saw the river below, which if the laden messenger failed, promised peace and Nepenthes, and with a grim determination, he pulled the trigger, and the end came.
Another who isn't happy with the verdict is Miss Hartle. She was interviewed one last time, and is said to be so sure that she is widowed that she's wearing mourning apparel for not only herself, but her children as well. She claims her husband John registered as August Werner in order to conceal his whereabouts from her. The paper says that she left London, Ontario, and found a new job at the British American Hotel in Windsor. Her mother is also with her at this point and is in agreement with her daughter, saying there was a mark on his body that not 1 in a million would have. Her mother goes on to say that we got the photograph and a thorough description of the dead man, and it corresponds so exactly that Wesley Hartle that we could come to no other conclusion. My daughter will never believe it was anybody else unless her husband should turn up in the flesh. I hope you enjoyed this story. It's a story where we'll never get complete closure. The man could have very well have been August Werner, and since I wasn't able to find any follow-up stories on the matter, we'll never know if police followed up on any murder leads, or if he just ended it that day on the bridge. Without finding an old police report from Constable O'Connor or the coroner's office, chances of finding his grave is very low. So he's out here resting near the water, undisturbed forever. Maybe he was Miss Hartle's husband. It does seem strange that he would register under a fake name at the lodge. Without a high-profile event like the death and inquest, it's unlikely that Miss Hartle would have learned of his whereabouts casually. Disappearances were common, and without publicity, they often stayed private. On the other hand, even his brother Wesley, despite not knowing of the marriage and not thinking that the dead man and his brother were the same person, he did agree that Miss Hartle's husband was his brother. She also never stopped believing that August Werner was in fact her husband. So it's unlikely that she was in it for insurance money or something like that, since the inquest did rule that the man was August Werner. And unfortunately, I couldn't find any follow-ups in the paper about her story or if her real husband did show up at some point. So until next time, thank you for watching.